Welcome to Time Capsule. Subscribe to help us preserve our shared history for generations to come.
Today, we're diving into the life of Martin Van Buren, a man you probably haven't thought about since a high school quiz, but who played a massive role in shaping the political system we know today. He wasn't a war hero, he didn't write the Constitution, but Van Buren was the ultimate political insider, the master strategist, who turned American politics into the two-party machine it is today. So let's rewind the clock and meet the man they once called the Little Magician. Martin Van Buren was born in 1782 in Kinderhook, New York, just a few years after the American Revolution. His family was Dutch-American, and he actually grew up speaking Dutch before English, the only president to do so. His father ran a tavern that doubled as a political hotspot, where young Martin soaked in the art of conversation and persuasion from an early age. He didn't come from wealth or aristocracy. Van Buren was a self-made man. He studied law, and by his 20s, he was already making waves in New York politics. He believed in alliances, organization, and structure, not just ideals. While many of the founders disdained political parties, Van Buren embraced them. He saw parties not as a threat to democracy, but as its engine. Van Buren helped build the Albany Regency, one of the most powerful political machines in state history. He understood that politics was about relationships and loyalty, and he mastered the art of coalition building. His strategic mind earned him the nickname, the Little Magician, not for any tricks, but for how skillfully he pulled political levers behind the scenes. In the 1820s, Van Buren hit the national stage. He served briefly as a U.S. Senator, then as governor of New York, and eventually as Secretary of State under Andrew Jackson. Jackson and Van Buren made an odd pair, the fiery general and the calm operator, but they complemented each other perfectly. Van Buren became Jackson's most trusted advisor and the architect of what we now know as the Democratic Party. In 1832, Van Buren became Jackson's running mate and was elected vice president. 4 years later, he succeeded Jackson as the 8th president of the United States. But here's the twist. Van Buren inherited all the problems Jackson left behind. Just weeks into his presidency, the Panic of 1837 struck, one of the worst economic crises in U.S. history. Banks failed, businesses collapsed, and unemployment soared. Van Buren stuck to a principle of limited government intervention, refusing to bail out the banks or pump government money into the economy. That decision, while consistent with his beliefs, cost him dearly. As the economy worsened, so did Van Buren's popularity. Critics mocked him as Martin Van Ruin.
Van Ruin! Down! Down with Van Buren! No more panic!
They painted him as a rich elitist, despite his humble roots. Whigs used his polished manners and expensive tastes as proof that he was out of touch. In reality, Van Buren remained a man of the people, but perception is everything in politics. In 1840, Van Buren faced off against war hero William Henry Harrison. The Whigs ran the first modern campaign. Slogans, songs, rallies, the works. Tippecanoe and Tyler too became the chant of the election. Van Buren, refusing to campaign directly, got swept aside in a populist wave. After losing re-election, Van Buren didn't fade quietly. In 1848, he ran again as the presidential nominee for the Free Soil Party, opposing the expansion of slavery. Though he didn't win, he helped lay the groundwork for the rise of the anti-slavery Republican Party. Martin Van Buren died in 1862 during the Civil War, having lived long enough to see the country he tried to unite fall into its greatest crisis. While he's often overshadowed by louder, more dramatic figures, Van Buren's impact on American political structure is lasting. He proved that democracy needs organization. He showed that politics isn't just about ideals, it's also about building coalitions, making deals, and yes, sometimes playing hardball. So was Martin Van Buren a forgotten genius or just another politician? Maybe both. But one thing's clear. The system we have today, the parties, the campaigns, the coalitions, owes a lot to him. He wasn't perfect, but he was pivotal. If you found this story eye-opening, give it a like. Drop a comment about your favorite underrated president, And make sure to subscribe to Time Capsule for more stories that unlock the past to explain the present. Until next time, stay curious and keep asking questions.
Thank you all for listening to my story. This is Martin Van Buren, signing out.